JDBARNES123 has always been afraid of anything paranormal. For 5 years when he was young, he suffered from severe anxiety and depression. While this was going on, some strange things began happening. One night he was having trouble sleeping when he heard a man's voice say his name. He blew it off as something in his head and eventually fell asleep. A few nights later, he heard it again. But this time it was louder, clear as day, and a woman's voice. He tried to respond, but the room was silent. At this point, he was starting to get nervous. Once again, the nights following were quiet, so he slowly forgot about the incident. That was until one night when he was laying in bed and started hearing someone breathing. He hid under their covers until it stopped, but the incident made it hard to sleep during the week following. Now that this Reddit user has moved and learned to better manage his depression and anxiety, the paranormal occurrences have stopped. 900 Popter loves their grandparents but hates their house. The house has been in their family for over a century, and something has always felt off about it. The rooms would always feel cold despite the air being off, and visitors often reported feeling like they were being watched. For about a month, this user and their parents were living in the house. It was during this time that an event happened that terrified them. One night, they woke for no particular reason and went to the bathroom. Suddenly, the door shut and locked behind them. The lock on the door was broken, so it shouldn't have been able to lock, let alone close, on its own. Then, the light in the bathroom went out. They had always been interested in ghost hunting and had a ghost hunting app on their phone. They'd used it in the past, but assumed it didn't work. The app was supposed to tell its user whatever the ghost was saying. As they opened the app, they felt something, or someone, breathing down their neck. A few seconds later, the door unlocked and the radar read one word: run. They ran back to hide and hid under the covers until they fell asleep. The next night, they woke again and went into the kitchen for a snack. It was there that they saw a dark figure pick something up from the pantry, turn to them, and then disappear. They tried to return to their room, but the living room door slammed shut as they walked toward it. Again, they felt someone breathing down their neck. They kept pulling at their door until it finally opened. Back in their room, hiding under the covers, they couldn't sleep because they kept hearing footsteps on the porch. The next night, they decided to try sleeping in the den. Their phone was left open to the ghost hunting app when it picked up a signal. It read, Quentin, their great-grandfather's name. That was the last activity the user experienced before they moved out. About 2 weeks ago, Twinned Fish 93's little sister began hearing voices. She said it's a deep and masculine voice that calls to her at night in her room, telling her to come outside. It comes from outside in the middle of their yard. One day, their parents went out and the Reddit user, their 2 little sisters, and their friend stayed home alone. That night, they saw something moving in the small patch of trees in their backyard. Telling the younger girls to stay inside, they went to investigate but found nothing. On their way back inside, something threw them over 5 feet into the air. They scrambled to their feet and ran inside, losing a shoe in the process. After cowering inside for a few minutes, they realized they needed that shoe for work the next day. So they ventured back outdoors. This time they came prepared, bringing their dog with them for protection, but he refused to follow them into the backyard. As quickly as they could, they grabbed their shoe and ran back inside. Finally, back indoors, they asked the elder of their sisters to look at their back because it felt like it was burning. She pulled up their shirt and screamed. There were several long scratches running down the user's back. The 4 then went out to the front porch while the youngest went back inside to retrieve something, but came back a few seconds later saying someone was looking into their back window. The only problem was that in order for her to have seen someone in the window, That person would have had to have been over 7 feet tall. Now, all thoroughly freaked out, they decide to remain on the porch until one of their parents came home. After a few minutes passed, they heard heavy footsteps running toward the front yard from the side of the house where the driveway extends. Gravel flew as though it was being kicked up, but nothing was there. They went back inside until their mother got home. She blessed the area where the Reddit user was attacked and their sister's body and spirit. Whatever the thing was, it didn't appear to be able to get inside the house. The user and their sister still believe it's hanging around the house to this day. I grew up in an older home in Florida. I have 2 brothers, and since I was the only girl, I got to have my own room on the second floor, a room that I would end up fearing at night. We lived in this house until we moved when I was 17. I don't remember anything strange happening until I was around 15 to 16. Just the normal. Mom asking us kids where we put a glass or a book. Small things that none of us touched. In hindsight, that was probably either the man or the boy. I came home late one night from a football game at my high school. It was around 10 o'clock or 11 o'clock. My younger brother had a friend over, and they liked to play pranks on me. When I poked my head in to say hello, I made sure I asked if they wouldn't mess with me that night, since I had to get up early for a soccer game. They both agreed and wished me a good night. The way my room was set up at the time was there was the actual main part of the room had my TV, dresser, a couch, and coffee table that I would use for my friends staying over or when I was reading. My bed was in a little alcove that used to be a small porch, so that my bed was flush with the windows that looked to the backyard. I put my bag on the couch and walked over to the bed to go to sleep. It was the middle of the night when someone knocking on the wooden bed frame woke me up. I thought it was my brother and his friend who were just going to be annoying and run out of the room giggling. I flipped over to yell at them but didn't see my brother. There was a boy about the age of 12 with sandy brown hair that hung to his chin, wearing a purple hoodie, just smiling at me, like a kid who got caught doing something he shouldn't have been. And I could see right through him to the rest of the room. I watched as he slowly faded away, completely terrified until he was gone. I slept on the couch that night with the TV going in the background, and I moved my bed to the center of the room after that. The next morning, I had almost talked myself out of it, thinking it was a dream or had really been the boys. I asked them the next morning if they had knocked on my bed, but both were sound asleep. My mom had overheard me and said she had seen the boy too. Since that night, we started to notice more strange things, but I am positive it wasn't the boy. There was a man, a mean man that I could feel at night in my room. We would hear footsteps walking around upstairs when all of us were in the kitchen. Books would fly from the shelves, and glasses would be pulled down and break. Our dogs would stand at the bottom of the stairs that led to the second floor and just growl. One of the most eerie things was the smell of cigarette smoke in the downstairs hallway. No one in our family smoked inside. Ever. One of the last things that happened before we moved was my brother waking up to see a tall, dark figure standing over me while I was sleeping. The entire family at that point had seen or experienced something. The boy was just a kid who wanted to be known. The man was something else. None of us were sad to drive away from that house for the last time. Marquard's love, their best friend Bella, and her little sister and brother went to Bella's grandparents' house to spend the night when they were younger. Although the house was next to a cemetery, no one was too worried. The writer was rather fascinated, but not yet wary. Bella's grandpa helped them set up a tent in the backyard. That night, they were up late watching a movie. When it was over, the user and Bella left the tent and went to sit on the swings in the backyard. Bella began telling stories about the haunted house she used to live in, After a while, something in the cemetery caught the writer's attention. When their eyes adjusted to the dark, they made out a faceless, horned figure looking at them through the darkness. Bella didn't see the figure at first, but when the user directed her attention to it, she freaked out. The pair bolted for the tent, zipping themselves inside. They turned on music to try to help them fall asleep, but it didn't muffle the sounds of a fence rattling like something wanted to climb over, and a repeating, terrifying bull-like huff. The next morning, they tried to tell their story to Bella's family. Bella's grandparents were skeptical, but her sister and mother, who had lived with Bella in the haunted house, believed every word. Ever since Drox 56 was at school with friends talking about Chucky, they've been afraid of dolls. Luckily, the only one they had at home was a basic Barbie doll. But then, for Christmas, their sister got 2 porcelain dolls and a big rag doll. Those dolls really freaked the Reddit user out. Every time they went into their sister's room, they would turn the dolls toward the wall so they weren't looking at them or into their room. Soon, creepy things started happening. Cuts and scratches would appear on the writer's hands and knees with no explanation of how they got there. One morning, when they woke up, there were red scratches on their back, although they didn't remember any pain or feeling of being scratched. The scariest thing happened while they were home alone. They went into the sister's room to play with her Dreamcast. As they made their way in, turning all the dolls toward the wall, they heard a little girl's laugh. The rag doll that had been lying on their sister's bed facing the wall slowly began turning toward them. They ran, locking themselves in their room until their mother and sister got home. Neither believed the story, and their sister was mad because the rag doll had fallen to the floor. The next day, the writer took the doll to the dumpster and never saw it again.